There comes a moment in every life when the noise becomes too loud, the pressure becomes too heavy, and the future feels too uncertain. A moment where the soul whispers questions no one else can hear. A moment where the mind becomes a battlefield and fear stands on every corner waiting to intimidate you. But in that moment, right in the center of your storm, there is a voice that does not shake, a voice that does not tremble, a voice that does not change with your feelings. It is the voice of God. And that voice is saying to you right now, relax. Everything will come to you, not by force, not by panic, not by fear, but by God's timing, God's promise, and God's perfect orchestration of your destiny. You have been carrying stress that was never yours to carry. You have been trying to control seasons that only God can design. You have been running after things that were already written to meet you at the appointed time. And today God is telling you to lay down your anxiety, quiet your racing heart, and step into the rest that comes from knowing that God does not fail. You see, anxiety grows in the soil of disbelief. Stress grows where trust is missing. And fear grows where your faith has been weakened by battles. But God is reminding you that He has never once told you to figure everything out. He has never once told you to carry your life on your shoulders. He has never once asked you to solve your future. God asked you to trust Him not partially, not temporarily, but completely. And when God says relax, He is not asking you to be careless. He is inviting you to be confident. Confident that what belongs to you cannot be taken. Confident that what is written for you cannot be erased. Confident that the path He designed will not collapse beneath your feet. Some of you have been trying to open doors that were never locked. You have been trying to convince people to see your worth when God already approved you. You have been chasing peace in places that were never meant to hold it. But God is whispering to your heart right now, stop worrying, stop overthinking, stop imagining the worst, stop fighting battles that are not even yours. God is moving in the background in ways you cannot see, and He is aligning things for you that you could never have aligned on your own. There are blessings being prepared with your name on them. There are people being positioned to help you. There are opportunities being shaped to fit your life, and none of them require your panic. They require your patience. You have prayed for strength, and God heard you. You have cried for clarity, and God saw you. You have begged for direction, and God has already begun guiding your steps even when it felt like nothing was moving. Sometimes the greatest work God does in your life happens in silence. When it feels like God is quiet, that is not abandonment, that is construction. He is building something behind the scenes, something bigger than you asked for, something deeper than you imagined, something more beautiful than you planned. But in order for you to receive it, you must relax. Because a restless heart cannot hear God, a panicked mind cannot discern God, and a worried soul cannot feel the peace God has already placed inside you. There is a reason God tells you over and over to trust Him. Trust is the bridge that carries you from where you are to where God is taking you. Trust is the anchor that keeps your soul steady when everything else is shaking. Trust is the spiritual posture that says, even if I don't see it yet, God is still working. Even if nothing looks possible, God is still writing. Even if the door hasn't opened, God is still preparing me. And when God tells you to relax, He is telling you that the outcome does not depend on your strength, it depends on His power. The timing does not depend on your strategy, it depends on His wisdom. The blessing does not depend on your hustle, it depends on His favor. Some of you have been living with fear of the future. You fear losing what you have. You fear missing what you hope for. You fear being disappointed again. And fear has been draining your spirit. But God did not give you life so fear could rule you. God did not give you breath so stress could control you. God did not plant hope in your heart so anxiety could uproot it. You were created to walk through life with faith, not frustration, with confidence, not chaos, with calmness, not confusion. God is telling you right now, breathe, slow down. There is nothing coming towards you that God has not already prepared you for. There is nothing ahead of you that God has not already seen. There is nothing happening around you that God cannot control. When God says relax, He is calling you back to spiritual alignment. He is calling you to reconnect with Him in a way that stills your heart. He is calling you to stop carrying the weight of tomorrow. Tomorrow is not your assignment. Trust is. Results are not your responsibility. Obedience is. The future is not your burden. Faith is. Every time you feel anxious about what's coming, you are forgetting who is guiding. Every time you panic about timing, you are ignoring God's promise that everything unfolds exactly when it should. Not early, not late, perfectly synchronized with your growth, your preparation, and your destiny. You may not see it right now, but God is bringing things together in ways you will look back on and say, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here. If that door didn't close, I wouldn't have found this one. If that person hadn't left, I wouldn't have discovered my strength. If that delay hadn't slowed me down, I wouldn't have arrived at the right moment. God wastes nothing, not a tear, not a prayer, not a closed door, not a difficult season. Everything is being woven into a masterpiece. But you cannot see the picture while you are inside the confusion. You cannot see the plan while you are in the middle of the pressure. That is why God says, relax, because if you could see what He sees, you would not be afraid. Some of you are tired, not physically tired, spiritually tired. Tired of being strong, tired of pretending you're okay, tired of waiting, tired of hoping, tired of believing. And that fatigue has made your faith feel heavy, but God sees your tiredness. God knows your limits. God understands your struggles. And when God tells you to relax, He is not saying you are weak. He is saying, let me carry what you cannot. Let me lift what is too heavy. Let me handle what is beyond you. You were never meant to survive life on your own strength. You were meant to lean on the one who does not faint, who does not tire, who does not break. You've been worried about your future. You've been comparing yourself to others. You've been wondering if your time has passed, if your chance is gone, if your destiny slipped out of your hands. But God does not operate according to human timelines. God does not rush. God does not delay. God does not make mistakes. What is yours will arrive. Not a minute too early, not a second too late. And when it arrives, it will come with a peace that reminds you it was God, not you, who made it possible. Relax. Everything will come to you. Not because the world will give it, not because people will hand it to you, but because God will command it. God will align it. God will release it. God will deliver it at the exact moment when you are ready, prepared, and spiritually positioned to handle it with maturity and wisdom. God has already written your story. God has already secured your blessings. God has already planned your breakthroughs. And all the stress you have carried has done nothing but drain your spirit of the peace God intended for you. So now God is calling you to surrender that stress, to release that fear, to let go of the need to control everything. You cannot speed up what God is still shaping. You cannot delay what God has already approved. And you cannot stop what God has commanded to move toward you. There comes a point in your journey where God begins to separate you from the noise of the world, not to isolate you, but to recalibrate your spirit. When God says relax, He is not just calming your emotions, He is restoring your spiritual balance. He is resetting the rhythm of your soul. He is pulling you away from hurry, away from pressure, away from the illusion that your destiny depends on how fast you run. God is reminding you that real progress is not measured by speed, it is measured by alignment. When your heart is aligned with God, your life begins to move with a grace that no human effort could produce. You begin to attract what was meant for you. You begin to walk into opportunities without forcing anything. You begin to see doors open without knocking. That is the power of surrendering your pace to God. The world teaches you to chase, to compete, to fight for your place, as if life is a race and you will be left behind if you slow down. But God is not asking you to run faster. God is asking you to trust deeper. Some of the things you are chasing are actually slowing you down. Some of the people you are holding on to are actually blocking your path. Some of the goals you created were born from fear, not faith. And God is saying, let go of what drains you so I can make room for what I ordained for you. Relaxing is not stepping back, it is stepping into divine order. It is saying, God, I refuse to carry what you did not command me to carry. It is admitting that you were never created to hold the universe together. Only God can do that. When God says relax, He is also breaking the chains of self-reliance. There is a subtle pride in believing that everything rests on your effort. There is a hidden fear in believing that your life will collapse if you stop worrying. But God never designed you to carry the weight of your future. God designed you to walk by trust. Every blessing you receive in your life will be a testimony of God's power, not your pressure. Every breakthrough that arrives will remind you that it came through God's timing, not your anxiety. Every door that opens will prove that God is in control, not your sleepless nights and overthinking. God is telling you that rest is not laziness. Rest is spiritual obedience. When you choose rest, you are declaring that God is sovereign, God is capable, God is faithful, and God is enough. Some of you are fighting battles that are already won. You are wrestling with fears that God already defeated. You are worrying about problems God already solved. The anxiety you carry comes from imagining a future without God in it. But you are not walking alone. God goes before you. God stands behind you. God remains beside you. God surrounds you in ways the human mind cannot comprehend. And God is telling you that everything you need will arrive exactly when your spirit is ready to receive it. You do not need to chase what God has appointed for you. What is written for you will come with ease, with clarity, with peace. It will not confuse you. It will not exhaust you. It will not lead you into fear. It will simply unfold because God is the one guiding it. There are seasons where God will slow you down, not to punish you, but to protect you. You might think nothing is happening, but God is preventing you from running into storms you cannot see. You might think you are behind, but God is keeping you from entering a place before you are spiritually ready. You might think your life is delayed, but God is aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities so that when the moment comes, everything fits perfectly. What you call delay is often divine protection. What you call stagnation is spiritual preparation. What you call silence is God working on details you don't even know exist. And through all of it, God is whispering, relax, because I'm the one handling what you cannot. Your journey is not random. Every step is connected to a larger plan. Every waiting period is connected to a future blessing. Every challenge is connected to a deeper strength God is building within you. God does not waste your tears. God does not ignore your prayers. God does not overlook your faithfulness. Everything you have endured is shaping you into the person who can handle what God is preparing for you. You prayed for strength, so God allowed situations that required you to grow. You prayed for wisdom, so God allowed circumstances that forced you to see beyond the surface. You prayed for peace, so God allowed storms that taught you where true peace comes from, not from circumstances, but from God alone. There's a special kind of peace that comes when you realize you do not have to control everything, when you understand that God is not limited by your timing, your mistakes, your fears, or your confusion. When you finally breathe and say, God, I trust the way you write my story. That surrender unlocks blessings that effort alone never could. That surrender shifts your atmosphere. That surrender removes the weight that has been pressing on your chest. That surrender invites God to move freely in your life, because God will not compete with your fears. God will not fight for space when your heart is filled with panic. God moves when you trust Him enough to step aside. Some of you have been carrying burdens that were never yours to lift. You've been trying to fix people God didn't tell you to fix. You've been trying to hold together situations God already released you from. You've been trying to understand things that were never meant to make sense yet. And God is calling you back to peace. God is saying, give me what overwhelms you, and I will give you what strengthens you. God never asks you to give something up without giving you something greater in return. When you surrender fear, God gives you clarity. When you release control, God gives you peace. When you lay down anxiety, God gives you direction. God's exchange is always better than your effort. Relaxing in God does not mean you stop working. It means you stop worrying. It means you move with faith, not fear. It means you take steps with confidence, not desperation. It means you build your life with wisdom, not panic. You can work hard and still be at peace inside. You can dream big and still be calm in your spirit. You can pursue your goals without being enslaved by them. Because God is the one who breathes life into your efforts. God is the one who multiplies your progress. God is the one who opens the right doors and closes the wrong ones. Your job is obedience. God's job is outcome. And this is where true freedom is born. When you stop forcing your future and allow God to guide it. When you stop living in the tension of what if and begin living in the assurance of God will. When you stop trying to rush God and instead align yourself with His timing. When you finally understand that God's pace is perfect, your story is unfolding exactly as it should. Nothing is late. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. And nothing God has written for you can ever be taken by anyone else. There comes a moment when the soul must decide what voice it will follow, the voice of fear or the voice of God. Fear tells you to hurry. Fear tells you to panic. Fear tells you that you are running out of time. But God speaks with a different tone, a steady tone, a voice that carries both authority and tenderness. God says, "Calm your heart, my timing holds no mistakes." And when God speaks, creation listens. When God declares a season for your life, nothing can interrupt it. Not people, not circumstances, not delays, not disappointments. When God sets the pace, everything aligns. Relaxing in God is not weakness, it is spiritual maturity. It is the realization that anxiety does not speed up God's plans. If anything, it slows down your ability to hear Him clearly. When your heart is restless, you lose the sensitivity to notice the quiet ways God moves. You miss the gentle signs. You overlook the small shifts. You walk past the very thing God sent to reassure you. That is why God is telling you to breathe again, to settle your spirit, to return to a posture of stillness. In stillness, you see clearer. In stillness, wisdom flows. In stillness, your spirit reconnects to the one who controls every detail of your life. There are blessings God will only release when your heart is calm enough to receive them. Some breakthroughs require peace, not panic. Some opportunities require clarity, not confusion. Some prayers are answered not when you shout the loudest, but when you trust the deepest. God knows what you are ready for, and God knows what would overwhelm you if given too soon. God's timing is not just about arranging events, it is about preparing your inner world. You may think you are waiting on God, but often God is waiting on your heart to settle into trust. Because a heart anchored in God can handle blessings that would crush an anxious mind. And hear this truth, what is meant for you will never require you to compromise your soul. What is written for you will not demand that you sacrifice your peace. What God prepared for you will not exhaust your spirit. The blessing sent by God will come wrapped in ease, in clarity, in confirmation. It will not confuse you. It will not test your worth. It will not drag you into emotional battles. God does not bless you with confusion. God blesses you with direction. God blesses you with assurance. God blesses you with the kind of opportunities that lift you, not crush you. This is why God tells you to relax, so that you can discern between what is sent by Him and what is sent to distract you. You must also understand that God's wait is not a punishment, it's preparation. When God slows your journey, it is because He is arranging something far greater than what you currently see. There are people whose lives must shift before they can meet you. There are doors that must be built before you are ready to walk through them. There are situations that must collapse before new ones rise. You are not waiting in a void. You are waiting in the hands of God. And anything placed in the hands of God is not lost, it is being shaped. God knows the exact moment when everything will converge. God knows when the right people will enter your life. God knows when your strength will match your calling. God knows when your character will be able to sustain what He gives you. And God knows when your heart will be ready to carry the blessings you once prayed for. So God asks you to relax because the journey is under divine supervision. Not one moment of your life is accidental. Not one step is wasted. Not one delay is pointless. You are being guided by the one who sees both the path and the destination at the same time. Some of you are fighting thoughts that were never planted by God. Thoughts that say you are behind. Thoughts that say you are forgotten. Thoughts that say you have missed your chance. But those thoughts are lies. If you are truly behind, God would push you. If you are headed toward danger, God would block you. If you had missed your season, God would redirect you. The very fact that God is asking you to relax means everything is still on course. You are exactly where you need to be for what God is preparing next. Nothing has escaped God's notice. Not one tear, not one fear, not one silent prayer whispered late at night. God has counted every one of them. Relaxing in God also means releasing the pressure to understand everything. There are chapters of your life that will not make sense right now. There are moments that feel unfair until time reveals why they were necessary. There are doors that closed because God saw something you couldn't. There are relationships that ended because God heard conversations you didn't. There are opportunities that slipped because God knew they would have drained you. God is not just protecting your future, God is protecting your peace. And sometimes His protection looks like disappointments. Sometimes it looks like delays. Sometimes it looks like detours. But one day you will look back and say, God saved me from what I thought I wanted. There is a deeper rest. God is calling you into a rest that is not based on circumstances, but on trust. A rest that remains steady even when life is uncertain. A rest that grows your spirit instead of draining it. A rest that says, I don't know how God will do it, but I know He will. This kind of rest disarms your fears and replaces them with faith. It silences your doubts and strengthens your courage. It shifts your focus from what could go wrong to what God has already made right. This rest is not passive, it is powerful. It is the posture of someone who has learned that God has never failed them and never will. You must also understand the spiritual truth that when God says relax, He is not only speaking to your heart, He is speaking to your future. He is commanding the storm to calm. He is commanding the path to clear. He is commanding the right people to move toward you. He is commanding the blessings that were held back to be released. God's command carries authority. When God speaks peace over your life, no chaos can override it. When God speaks timing over your journey, no force can delay it. When God speaks destiny over your steps, nothing can block what He decreed. There is a moment in every believer's life when God begins to untangle the knots inside the heart. Knots formed from worry, impatience, fear, disappointment, and the belief that everything depends on you. When God says relax, He is gently loosening the grip you have on your own understanding. He is removing the strain you've placed on your spirit. He is teaching you that life moves differently when you trust Him, not yourself. You begin to realize that the peace you were searching for in people, in plans, in success, in control was never meant to come from those things. Peace flows from God alone. It flows from the certainty that the one who created the universe is the same, one guiding your path. There are times when God withholds clarity, not to confuse you, but to draw you closer. If everything was clear, you would rely on your own logic. But when God dims the path and asks you to take the next step by faith, your relationship with Him deepens. You begin to hear Him more clearly. You begin to sense His presence more strongly. You begin to rely on His guidance instead of your assumptions. That is why some seasons feel uncertain, because uncertainty is the soil where deep trust grows. It is in uncertainty that God proves His reliability. It is in waiting that God shows His faithfulness. It is in silence that God reveals His strength. And through it all, He speaks the same message. Relax, because none of this depends on your power. You cannot hear God clearly when your mind is racing. You cannot see His guidance when your heart is trembling. You cannot receive His blessings while holding on to fear. That is why God slows you down, not to frustrate you, but to free you. He wants to remove the noise that has been clouding your heart. He wants to take away the fear that has been shaping your decisions. He wants to silence the doubts that have been directing your steps. When God says relax, He is telling you to let go of the burden to control outcomes, because you were never created to carry the weight of tomorrow. God is the one who holds tomorrow. God is the one who sees the hidden. God is the one who knows the unseen. And God is the one who brings all things together at the right time. Every time you rushed, you felt the consequences. Every time you feared, your peace was shaken. Every time you tried to force something, it slipped away. But when you finally trusted, doors opened. When you rested, clarity came. When you surrendered, everything aligned. Life works differently when God becomes your anchor, because God does not build your future on unstable ground. He builds it on timing, on wisdom, on purpose, on strength. And nothing that is built by God can ever be destroyed by pressure. Nothing God establishes can be uprooted. Nothing God blesses can be taken away. That is why He tells you to relax, because He knows the outcome is already secured. Sometimes God will remove the things you were leaning on, not to leave you empty, but to remind you where your true strength comes from. You may have placed your hope in people who couldn't carry the weight of your expectations. You may have relied on plans that looked good on paper but were never rooted in divine wisdom. You may have trusted your own strength until exhaustion showed you its limits. And God, out of mercy, removes the illusions so you can rest in Him again. God is not taking anything away to harm you. God is taking away what was harming your peace, harming your faith, harming your growth. You think you lost something, but God is actually protecting you from losing yourself. There is a divine order that God has written for your life, and that order cannot be rushed. You may feel behind, but God sees you right on schedule. You may feel stuck, but God sees you being repositioned. You may feel forgotten, but God sees you being prepared. His timing is perfect because His knowledge is complete. God sees what you cannot see. God knows what you cannot comprehend. God understands what you cannot explain, and because He sees the whole picture, He asks you to relax and trust that He is guiding every detail with precision. Life becomes lighter when you realize that God does not need your panic to fulfill His promise. God does not need your anxiety to make His will unfold. God does not require your stress to open the right door. What God requires is your trust. Not perfect trust, but willing trust. The kind of trust that says, God, even if I don't understand it, I know You are with me. The kind of trust that replaces worry with worship. The kind of trust that turns fear into faith. The kind of trust that frees your heart to breathe again. Because where trust grows, anxiety dies. There is a peace God wants to place inside you that is unshakable. A peace that does not depend on external circumstances. A peace that cannot be stolen by disappointment. A peace that stays steady no matter who comes or who leaves. A peace that remains firm even when life becomes unpredictable. This peace is not built on the absence of problems. It is built on the presence of God. When God is your foundation, storms may shake your surroundings, but they cannot shake your soul. There is a confidence that rises within you when you know your life is held by divine hands. Some blessings require you to be at peace before they arrive. God will not pour new blessings into a restless spirit. He wants your heart steady, your mind clear, your faith anchored, because blessings come with responsibility, and God wants you strong enough to carry what you once prayed for. That is why He leads you through seasons that strengthen your patience, sharpen your wisdom, deepen your character, and expand your faith. You are not waiting for nothing. You are being shaped for something. And when the time comes, when God decides the moment is right, everything will unfold with such harmony that you will know without a doubt that it was God's hand guiding it. Opportunities will align. People will appear. Pathways will open. Peace will fill your heart. You will not have to beg for what God has written for you. You will not have to chase what God has commanded toward you. You will not have to fight for what God has destined for your life. What is yours will find you because God Himself is sending it.